Today, I would like to review this book, Aron Nimzowitsch, On the Road to Chess Mastery, 1886-1924. This is a hardcover book from this company, McFarland, which really creates beautiful chess books. One may say that they are expensive, but honestly, the quality is outstanding. And what do I mean for outstanding? Well, obviously, as a cover, we have a very nice cover of the book. But the part I like is the historical records that they have found and the way they treat them. For example, we have all the tables of the tournaments that Nimzowitsch played. The games are annotated, sometimes lightly, sometimes more heavy, depending on the game. So they are beautiful, and there is always a diagram in each game, as we can see. And of course, at the beginning of the chapter, you can find a lot of history for that period. Okay, look, all these tables that they have, they give you a complete history of the player. There are also beautiful, very beautiful pictures of the past. So there is clearly a big work of finding the information. And then, as you can see, it's divided also year by year. And that's great. Honestly, in my opinion, it's really worthy the price, and it's worthy the fact that you should have them in your chess library, because it's useless to buy 100 chess books that have no quality compared to something that is a work of history research and chess mastery, because obviously the games are always annotated well. With that said, I would like to show you one of the games of this book, okay? Okay, I think I found the right game to show you. This is from a tournament that was won by Akiba Rubinstein, okay? Very strong player. Here you have all the table of the tournament. And imagine, this tournament was played from August 19 to September 18, 1 month. Can you imagine? They played this tournament for 1 month. We are speaking of something like 21 rounds. It's crazy that they were playing so much. So imagine compared to today that they want to play only blitz. There is obviously a lot of history about this tournament, and it's explained here. But what is important, I think, is this game that I want to show you, played between Akiba Rubinstein, that is white, and Aron Nimzowitsch, that is black. Okay, so d4, d5, knight f3, e6, c4, c5. Notice this tournament is, I forgot to tell you the name, it's Carlsbad. It's a very famous place for tournaments in that time. It was played on August 22nd, 1907. 1907, okay? So we are watching something that happened more than 100 years ago. The notes to this game are by Nimzowitsch. So the authors of this book did actually the historical research to find something that Nimzowitsch commented more than 120 years ago. Okay, so 6 takes d5, e takes d5, knight c3, knight c6, and bishop b4. At that time, the refutation 6g3 was not known. So probably this is a posthumous note. Okay, so in that time it was played g3, which would make sense because it started to create a big pressure on this side. But okay, we played bishop f4. How does black continue in this position? Sometimes when you read a book, you need to stop a minute and try to think about what you would do and why. Okay, how would you continue in this position? Black continue with c takes d4, knight takes d4, and bishop b4. The next move, obviously, for white is to try to take out this bishop, right? So e3, knight f6. As we can see, both players are really working well in regard of developing their pieces. This shows their understanding of the game, okay? Knight takes c6, b takes c6, bishop d3, castle. Now, also red white castle, so this is not pin anymore. If you were black, what would you play? So why I ask you these questions? Because it's nice that you watch this review of this game and this book, but it's also nicer if you actually learn something from it. So when I ask you a question, you can pause the video and think a little. That will make you grow as a chess player. Okay? Black at this point decided that this bishop here is in a useless position because it's not pinning anymore, nothing. So he returned back, bishop d6. Black obviously does not intend to allow an encirclement and even prepare c6, c5. This is c6, c5. Notice that Nimzowitsch is a player that we must study because it has some beautiful games in which he shows some maneuvers of pieces that are really deep and show that in that time they had a long time controls because they were able to think strategically. Bishop g3. This is a good move, okay? Generally, you don't give your opponent a chance to gain the tempo. By the way, again, this is the historical research that you find in this book. For example, here they show you a picture of that time with the site of a tournament, so the place where they were playing. So it's great, it's great, and you cannot get this from other books. So that's why I'm clearly excited by this type of books. Notice that here it says that this move wouldn't have been good, and they explain it with a variation, okay? I will not give you all the variation because I'm not here to bore you to death. I'm just trying to show you a book that I believe is interesting, for maybe for your chess library. Bishop takes g3, h takes g3, so obviously you take to the center, because in this way you avoid to have a pawn that cannot really promote sometimes, because if you take away all the pieces and you leave this pawn and the two kings, the black king could easily draw. And toward the center they gain activity, so they control more squares. So that's the reason why we generally take toward the center. But of course, every rule has an exception. c5, rook c1, bishop e6, queen a4. Also, the attempt to blow the center by 15 e4 would at most lead to an equal game. So he says that this move would lead to an equal game, and he proves it again with a variation that he gives. Okay. Now he played Queen b6, and he says, at the time it was already clear to me that c5, c4, and not d5, d4 would be the right plan. So he says this is the right plan, but not this. Okay. Let's see why. Let's see what he says. Because the attempt to break through d5, d4 would push the dynamics to the extreme, and thus be very wrong. Less dynamics would be better here. c5, c4, this plan gives a certain security, our blocked security, and makes it possible, on the other hand, to develop a limited, however reasonable, initiative. Queen f3. He forces c5, c4, which at the time was thought to be compromising. So here we see also, through the reasonings that Nimzowitsch gives in this game, what was the thinking of a chess master of that period upon c5, c4. That's quite interesting. And he plays, in fact, c4, bishop e2, a5, rook f d1, queen b4. The limited initiative. White continues with rook d4. White need not to fear the doubling of his a-pawn. So this is the thing that I just told you, right? He played this because he's not afraid of queen takes a3. So why he's not afraid? Well, here there is a kind of a variation that he gives and the reason behind. So when you will take the book, you will be able to see the reason behind. Okay. In the game, he didn't take on a3, so it was clear for him that it wasn't the right way to go. He played rook f d8. Rook c d1. Again, as you can see, he's not afraid that you take on a3. Rook d7. Bishop f3. Rook a d8. So why he is not afraid? Because here we have a problem. This is not an isolated queen pawn, but is a backfoot pawn. And as you can see, white is trying to fight for taking this down. So that's why it's not important on this side, because the fight is all in the center, which makes it quite interesting, the way they felt about the game in that time. Okay? Okay, he says, this position looks like a Greek work of art with its integrity and marvelous economy where all the pieces have reached their ideal positions. No changes should be allowed in this position. Steeped in perfection. And here he gives a line saying that the position brings to a draw. Okay? But now white played a move, knight b1, which says this disturbs the equilibrium and only leads to the disruption of his own position. So it means that white, because he was white and he was Rubinstein, he was trying to win the game. And he forced, and he didn't force in the right way. Okay? And that's interesting to know. Now, rook b8, now is attacking twice here. Rook 1 d2. And now you can see what happened. Queen takes a3. Now he can take on a3. And obviously white takes with the knight, because otherwise it will lose it. And king f8. Now king f8, it shows that for Nimzowitsch, this was already a kind of endgame position because it's trying to activate the king. e4, d takes e4, rook takes d7, knight takes d7, bishop takes e4, knight c5, rook d4. The weakness of b2 would have been apparent even with the best continuation. And here it gives what he thinks would have been the best continuation for white. Notice that in the time they didn't have an engine to check. So obviously the authors of this book have made their check with engines, okay? Okay, now Nimzowitsch continued with knight takes e4. Yes, sometimes it's better to have a bishop than a knight in the endgame. Yet you say, hey, but the knight can reach 64 squares, while the bishop can reach only 32. In this case, black's bishop is only on the light squares. So probably white will try to have a strategy against it, which could be to place his own pawns on the dark squares. But the problem in this position is the pawn b2 that now is gone. Boom. Right? So that's kind of important. Knight takes c4, rook b4, knight d6, rook takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop takes e2. And now we are in the endgame practically. So what happens is that black needs to convert the advantage into a win, which means he needs to know how to do it. Okay. So how do you think he will do it? Because sometimes in an endgame you just want to reach a certain position that you will think it's a winning one. Okay, so sometimes it's a real poor calculation, sometimes it's a visualization of what you want to achieve. Okay, white continue with knight c3. Here there is also a line with king f1. Like I said before, in the endgame you try to let's say activate your king. Okay, but there is a reason why king f1 probably didn't work out. Okay, and you can read it in the book. Yet, after white plays knight c3, black immediately plays what? He plays bishop c4, which blocks, however, white from playing king f1. Now the game is nearly finished. Obviously, white immediately plays this move, f4, because it gives the square for his king to enter into the game, but probably black's king is faster. King f2, king d6 is going to support his pawn. What does that mean? That at a certain point, white will have to sacrifice the knight for stopping that pawn, and then the game is practically win. Okay? King d3, king c5, this is called opposition. g4, king b4, king d4, and bishop b3. Obviously, if he played this, he would have not won the game. Can you see why? So he had to play bishop b3, g5. Now he can play a4, knight b1, bishop e6, trying to block the pawns from advancing, g3, king b3, knight c3, a3, king d3, g6, blocking these squares, so both pawns will not be able to advance. And the game continues with king d4 and king c2. And here white resigned. This was Akiba Rubinstein, that was one of the greatest players of that period, that actually went to win Carlsbad 1907, from 1907. Notice that Nimzowitsch arrived fourth with 12 points and a half, while Rubinstein won the tournament with 15 points. 15 points. I believe it's a great book. There is a lot of history, a lot of stuff that one can learn from, and so it's really great. The fact that they have tournaments with 20 rounds, it's amazing, I think, compared to today, that I don't know, the weekend tournaments are 5 rounds, and they are never doing these big tournaments for amateurs. They just do it for those who want to become international masters or grandmaster, but not for amateurs. And I think it could be interesting also for amateurs. In any case, this was the book Aron Nimzowitsch on the Road to Chess Mastery from 1886 to 1924, published by McFarland Company. It's a great publisher that really has these beautiful books and that I really love. I really love them, honestly. It's beautiful to have them in your library.